August 22nd, 2025. A 23-year-old Iranian refugee, Iryna, found herself getting attacked senselessly on a trailway station. Now, today marks September 10th, and which is the first time I come across this story. I see it trending, and I have no choice but to feel some type of way. Online, there are people expressing that this is a racial issue. There's even a gentleman online right now that's expressing this is white people's George Floyd moment.
Hey, white America, I think you just found your George Floyd. You're 12 times more likely to be murdered by a black American than the other way around. And this is not to condemn all black Americans. That's a statistical reality. And it needs to stop. You just found your George Floyd. You watched that tape? Let me ask you, are we supposed to be as offended, seeing, if we were to put these two in a side by side, as offended at George Floyd's situation than Zarutska's? Because I'm not. Not even close. There are a few key differences. First off, George Floyd is not part of a demographic in this country that is 12 times more likely to be murdered than a white person. That's the first difference. Second difference is Zarutska didn't choose to jam a speedball up her ass. It's hyperbole to make a point. Zarutska didn't live a life harming those around her and living as a degenerate. Zarutska didn't choose to rob a woman at gunpoint with the child in the home. Zarutska didn't choose to resist arrest. Zarutska didn't choose to ask that the air conditioning be turned on in the car until she didn't like it anymore so she be taken out of the car and continue resisting arrest. Zarutska chose to get on a train. Bet you the whole country won't burn down. I bet you won't see $2 billion of damages in the first couple of months. I bet you not anything close to that. So yeah, there are some key differences. I hope I've crystallized them for you. But white America, you just found your George Floyd.
So let's talk about it. George Floyd, someone clearly on drugs, which I actually disagree that fentanyl was the reason why he died. Maybe it played a part into it. But the stress of an actual cop, which is not normal, having his knee on George Floyd's neck, contributed to his death. Hence why, yet again, another black person gets killed by a cop in America, seemingly having a tendency to get away with such crimes. So when I look at this specific story, I'm quite confused on why we're comparing the two. Why is this a racial issue? There's some people pointing out that these people stood by and did nothing. They watched. And if this was a black person that was getting killed and a white person amongst these black people, then that wouldn't have went down that way. They would have done something, you must think. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to remind you, I disagree. If a white man had a knife and stabbed a young black lady and proceeded to walk through the subway, I believe those same black people would have reacted the same exact way. I'm very confused on why on earth is this being deemed as a racial issue when simply it isn't. The problem at hand is the fact that this is a mental health issue, not a racial. And it seems as if American politics is taking it by the hands. Some white people feel as if this is their moment. Even down to Van Jones' take on the murder.
Of words has erupted between Charlie Kirk and CNN's esteemed intellectual Van Jones over the Charlotte stabbing. Let's get into it.
The narrative that they have pushed forward in the last 10 years is that there is a relentless assault against black people on behalf of white people. And the data does not show that. In fact, it's the exact opposite. White individuals are actually more likely to be attacked, especially even per capita, by black individuals in this country.
People like Charlie Kirk, Van, they've been looking for opportunities to make this some sort of like reciprocal George Floyd situation. And that's the part that I think he's almost giving away the game. And it's sad to see a lot of people going along with it.
We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, it's just pure race mongering, hate mongering. It's wrong.
All right, time out. I swear, it's amazing how uninformed these people that do these shows are. But let's clue Van into the obvious here before we continue.
Y'all gotta let go. Y'all gotta let go. Who's over with, nigga?
Then he says that if something like that had happened the other way, there would be sweeping changes imposed on society. Where is the George Floyd Policing Act? It didn't pass. Even when you had a white police officer murder a black man on live television, the whole world saw.
According to the courts, yes, a murder. But according to our two eyes and functioning brain, a fentanyl overdose by a low-life criminal. But go on.
It's about the fact that we don't know how to deal with people who were hurting in the way this man was hurting. Hurt people hurt people.
Yes, he was just a hurt person. So you see, we should have some empathy for him, okay? We don't know what he was going through. That could have been you or I having a bad day and deciding to stab a woman in the neck over it. Charlie Kirk, your response.
Race hustler, Marxist, Van Jones. When a white person is murdered, we don't burn down the country. But when George Floyd overdosed on drugs, it's Floydapalooza. Van Jones, he puts race in almost every situation where it doesn't exist. For example, with the death of George Floyd, Van Jones repeatedly said that it was a racist attack. You know who didn't say that? Keith Ellison, who is the Attorney General of Minnesota at the time, said that race did not play any role.
Now, you know why he's saying that, right? Oh, it didn't play any part in George Floyd's role. It's because they would open up the police people, right? It would cause more issues, more investigations, which would in turn make that person want to have to, resign. Okay, so some of these people protect or try to dilute the situation to better themselves, right? In what way is this situation racial? It claims she called me a nigger. Well, let's go over this gentleman's history real quick, because I think that's important before we move anywhere. Clearly, this gentleman has a history of offenses. Mecklenburg County courts and jail records show Brown has been arrested in connection with 14 cases spanning more than a decade. His history includes convictions for felony larceny, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and communicating threats, leading to a 6-year prison sentence in 2015 for incidents dating from 2013 and 2014. He was released in 2020. Within months of his release, Brown was charged with assaulting his sister, according to WSOC TV. Even Brown's mother has blamed the courts for allowing his son to be out in the community. Brown was diagnosed with schizophrenia and has a documented pattern of delusional behavior. In January, he was arrested for allegedly repeatedly calling 911 to claim that a man-made material has been implanted into his body and was dictating his ability to eat, walk, and speak. Police described that arrest as a misuse of emergency systems and notated concerns about his mental stability. He was released without bond. In July, a judge had ordered a competency evaluation, but it wasn't completed, and Brown remained free until the fatal stabbing. After his arrest, the killing of this young lady, prosecutors filed a motion for another competency test. Court records confirmed that Brown is being held without bond at the Mecklenburg County Jail. My God. Someone who clearly doesn't have the mental capability was failed by the courts. He clearly did not have the mental capability to move around as a normal human being based off of his history. So we got pictures of people expressing that this judge should be in jail right along with him. You got Donald Trump blaming that it's Democrats that's the problem running their city. In fact, I actually agree. Democrats in Democratic cities in these hellhole places. I'm from Chicago. Yet they spend all this money in taxes, but the roads and the infrastructure is terrible. That's Democratic. We still have existing issues of weapons being out there, or the criminal justice place where people are not properly being evaluated. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a racial issue, but solely a mental health one. We have people who are suffering from mental health, and the courts do not have the wherewithal to actually evaluate properly Democratic and or in these red states where these people, i.e. white people or Hispanic people, are going in mass droves and shooting people up because they are not having the mental capability to have these said weapons. But ladies and gentlemen, that's not the problem here today. The problem solely at hand is the fact that we have a fundamental problem when it comes down to mental health and how to handle the situation. The courts had an idea, hey, this man is not mentally stable and we need to do an evaluation. The negative and the where they failed him is that they didn't do it and still allowed him to be free. And you can see in the video clear as day in his face. He doesn't look like he got it. Oh, white bitch, I'm finna kill her. Oh. And he proceeds to murder her. But let's take a note here. As he walks past the murder situation and you see blood squirting on the ground, him gathering himself together, he walks right past two white guys that he could have easily stabbed. And if it was a white issue, I would think he would attack them. But that's not what happened there. He expressed, hey, she called me a nigger. I got that white woman. Now, is it credible to come to the understanding that it is a racial issue based off of the words of a person who has been diagnosed with schizophrenia? Does that make sense to you? That yes, I agree, he killed this white woman because she was a white woman, and this gentleman was in his right mind. If he isn't in his right mind, how can we dare put that onus on him? Now, to be clear, he should rot in hell, certainly. But getting the death penalty, getting life imprisonment is a misjustice. He should be put in an insane asylum, which I actually don't agree an insane asylum will help you, but more of is a prison for people who cannot be helped. We don't have the studies when it comes down to mental health to properly address those vast, extreme versions of mental health issues. So what they do is they medicate them and keep them mentally in a prison and in their own mind. In this institution, I believe that's what should happen to him. It is just as equivalent as life imprisonment. And taking his life because he is diagnosed with schizophrenia, I believe, is an injustice. People like him should be studied and kept off the streets so that we can find other people who find themselves in such like manner. so that innocent people who find themselves coming off to work sitting on a train, done nothing wrong, not only that, but fled from our own country to a place that was deemed as better, the land of the free, because our home is being invaded. This is not an issue of racism, but a case of wrong place and wrong time. You have more information, everything you need to know when it comes down to the Charlotte light rail stabbing.
Iryna Zarutska, a 23-year-old Ukrainian immigrant hoping for a new beginning in Charlotte, was fatally stabbed last month on the Lynx Blue Line in South End. Zarutska's death has received national attention after the video was released, with public comments from President Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and federal, state, and local officials. Here's what to know about the incident. Police say the stabbing suspect, DeCarlos Brown, attacked Zarutska without warning or interaction just minutes after she boarded the train on August 22nd. Brown is now charged with first-degree murder. His lawyer said during a first court appearance that Brown had a long history of mental health issues. The stabbing has entered the political sphere and has sparked conversation across Charlotte and the country. City leaders are demanding immediate safety improvements for public transit. President Donald Trump called the attack vicious and horrible. North Carolina Governor Josh Stein is calling for more cops, urging state lawmakers to pass his proposal aimed at recruiting and retaining officers. Zarutska's family, devastated by her loss, has received nearly $100,000 in donations on a GoFundMe page as of September 8th. Follow charlotteobserver.com for updates on this story.
Shout out to Charlotte Observer. Rest in peace to Iryna. This isn't a police issue. This isn't a George Floyd issue. This is in no relation connected to that of George Floyd. Police officers wasn't involved. So calling for more cops is quite pointless when the actual issue is us doing proper evaluations of mental health. And then those who are not equipped to be in public amongst everybody else should not be there. I must repeat that. Because we got people like President Trump who stokes the flames of racism and always calls for the death of that of a black person.
For far too long, Americans have been forced to put up with Democrat-run cities that set loose savage, bloodthirsty criminals to prey on innocent people. In Charlotte, North Carolina, we saw the results of these policies when a 23-year-old woman who came here from Ukraine met her bloody end on a public train.
President Donald Trump said DeCarlos Brown Jr. deserves the death penalty for killing a Ukrainian refugee in North Carolina in August. A man who police identified as Brown was caught on video stabbing 23-year-old Iryna Zarutska on a Charlotte light rail train on August 22nd.
Now let me pause here. Did you see his face beforehand? Looks like he's in a daze or confused about what's going on. And oh shit. Opens his knife and proceeds to stab this young lady.
The release of the security footage over the weekend brought the incident to Trump's attention. Trump said in a post, "The animal who so violently killed the beautiful young lady from Ukraine who came to America searching for peace and safety should be given a quick, there is no doubt, trial, and only awarded the death penalty. There can be no other option."
My question is, if we award this gentleman a death penalty, it prevents us from having the ability to study, to take proper evaluation, and learn what signs to pick up on to keep these said people and potential incidences from happening in the future, if we did the proper evaluation. Iryna murder case in Charlotte was a policy choice, is what the Heritage Foundation is expressing.
It's not a surprise that somebody was murdered by this person. It's not a surprise. It was a policy choice. The Black Lives Matter ethos that it's law enforcement's fault that we have these problems and we need to get criminals back on the streets. We're seeing already indications of the political leadership there and how you could arrive at the understanding that they were totally comfortable with accepting this level of risk of re-releasing someone this violent to do something that
14 times.
It is the exact opposite of the vision that they were pretending to tell us was the problem. When everyone put up their black squares on Instagram and decided to defund the police and that we were just going to let criminal activity go because of some supposed notion of systemic injustice. And that's why it's not being covered by the AP or CNN or anybody else, because it is such clear proof on video, let alone the data prolific throughout criminal justice stats, that we do have a problem in these urban areas. We do have a violence problem. We do have an under-incarceration problem. We do have an undercharging and prosecuting problem. We have that even here in DC today. There is a sick culture of violence in those urban centers, and it demands swift actions. If places like our cities are more unsafe than war zones, wake up, people.
I agree and disagree with this gentleman. Number one, our prison populations in these areas of democratic areas are terrible. Overpopulated. Because the laws and the way things are set up to over-incriminate that of black people. That is understood. Newsflash, black people are quite scary. But because of the way the structure and the systemic portion of the world is set up, we are set up to be outcast. Every person on that train was afraid of him. Hell, I would have been hesitant. Because I don't know what it is that he has going on. And you can see clear as day, he is in a daze. Oh, looks like he has one of the schizophrenic visions and proceed to stab this young lady. This case in no way is in relation to that of George Floyd, but a systemic problem that failed him and that young lady. It isn't the fact that we didn't have more cops available. It isn't the fact that we didn't have the proper establishment of police or the judge leaving him free. The problem was the lack of evaluation on his mental health or how to deal with that. And to be fair, the black people, mental health, the way it is handled is so subpar, it's ridiculous. The way we handle mental health is sending you to prison. I agree, you shouldn't be on the streets. But that's due to the fact that we don't know how to deal with mental health. And newsflash, we deal with it a lot. But black people have been subjected to racism so much. The fact that they are being downcasted, judged. All those people on that train judged him because he was a black person. Oh, he's crazy as hell. I'm not fucking. Neither one of them wanted anything to do with that. So maybe you're right. Maybe those people didn't do anything or step in at that moment because they were afraid. They were in shock. Some of the other people, if you see, they blatantly got up. It wasn't a racial issue. It was a fact that they didn't know. They thought this nigga was crazy and needed to keep themselves safe. Rest in peace to this young lady. For she did not deserve this, but was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And what is at blame is the fact that we don't have a good grasp and handle on mental health. Particularly when it comes down to black people. Because we're going to give this man life in prison or the death penalty when he should be in an insane asylum. Heavily medicated, off the streets. Democrats have not been doing their job. Hence why the roads and the conditions and the infrastructure they have are subpar. Terrible. And it also goes to the resources. When we are raising these kids, seeing these signs of mental health issues, this wasn't something that happened out of nowhere. It's a history that followed. But it's also a history that follows these mental health issues of these young white or Mexican kids that go out and shoot up places. We point the fingers at Republicans for gun laws, but we point the finger at Democrats for justify letting someone go with a track record out of prison. Newsflash, they're overpopulated. So we have black judges who are trying to help. Not understanding that they're making the situation worse. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a black issue. This is a human being issue. A mental health issue. And that's what the narrative and propaganda should be, and not stoking the flames of racism and biasness and separation and division. We should come together, have a level of understanding in the midst of tragedies like this. Seek help. Ask questions. Come together. Let's figure out this mental health thing, because that is the result of this tragedy. Not racism, not George Floyd, not police, not Trump, not Democrats. None of them were there. It was mental health that was present.